Commitment, honesty, integrity, these are the core values that create the foundation for Umbrella Corp.
Hello and welcome back to TechRadar. I'm Vic Hood, TechRadar's gaming writer.
And I'm Matt Phillips, TechRadar's video producer, and we were both lucky enough to get hands-on early with Resident Evil 3 last week, as well as Resident Evil Resistance, so we thought we'd come on camera and chat to you guys about it. All the gameplay that you're going to see throughout this is Resident Evil Resistance, because that's the only stuff we were allowed to capture. Anything you see from the main game, Jill Valentine running around, that was all provided by Capcom, so that we can be as transparent with you as possible. So yeah, Vic, for a little bit of context for the people watching, what Resident Evils have you played before? What did you think of them? How are you with Resident Evil games?
So I've always been a little bit hesitant about Resident Evil games because I'm not a big zombie, scary movie games person. Okay. But I've played the first one when it was on PlayStation, and then I played the remastered version of that. I've played Resident Evil 2, the remake of that, and then I think I played, it must have been 7, perhaps. So I've dabbled a little bit, but I've always been a bit wary of it. It's just since they've started remaking them that I've kind of properly sank back in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. So I always avoided Resident Evil because I'm a massive wimp and hate horror games. So I played Resident Evil 5 way back in the day on 360 co-op. That was pretty good fun co-op, but it really wasn't a horror game. And then I went back to 4 on Wii, I think, which is probably the worst way to play that game, but I know that's a beloved game out there. Yeah. And then last year played Resident Evil 2 Remake and was just blown away. Absolutely loved that. I think I'm not as much of a scaredy cat now as I once was. So I absolutely loved that game. And the thing that shocked me going into 3 was how different a game 3 is.
It is, yeah. I think the main thing is that you're not trapped in one place, and not necessarily, well, you kind of are trapped, but just the change of environment is such like a breath of fresh air, I think, just to go into like urban city instead of being trapped in the RPD for the essentially the entirety of the game. Yeah,
exactly. So we played a section of the game, Jill Valentine, just as you got off the subway, you were in downtown Raccoon City, you needed to power up the subway again. Yeah. And yeah, you're exactly right. I think I probably killed more zombies in the first 20 minutes of this than I did in the entirety of Resident Evil 2. And it took me a while to get used to that. You know, I literally just finished Resident Evil 2 the night before. So I was in that mode of avoidance is key and stockpiling ammo and stuff. And then we were playing for about 20 minutes and I had like 70 handgun rounds. And I was like, oh, I think I'm supposed to be killing everything. It's a completely different vibe.
I think it's kind of, it's a baptism of fire a little bit because I played it and then I went back and I've been playing Resident Evil 2 Remake since we played it because I wanted more of it again, and it is such a difference. I think like playing that and having to kill so much so quickly has now just desensitized me now that I've gone back. I'm like, totally it's fine, I can take anything, this is okay, which is great, but it was really enjoyable even with those like moments that were usually probably would have put old me off games. Like as you said, I'm not like a horror game kind of person, and it usually puts me off quite drastically, but it doesn't feel like a horror game in that. There's so many other elements, so much puzzle elements that actually the zombies feel like a bit of a side part really to it.
For sure, yeah. And I don't know how you felt about it, but going into these sort of wide open areas, you know, you're in streets and going through shops and stuff, there were much more opportunity to take out a lot of zombies in one go. Like there are like red barrels and electricity things you can shoot that's going to electrocute everybody. And so this game is encouraging you to take out these zombies much more frequently than I think 2 did. Which was a really interesting thing. And then of course 2 had Mr. X, which was terrifying being hunted by Mr. X. And 3, of course, has the Nemesis. So chat a little bit about Nemesis jumping into your game and how you found that.
So yeah, I was a bit worried when we got to Nemesis in 3 just because I hate Mr. X in 2. But I think it was all about kind of the strategy that you die a couple of times, or if you're like me, you die a couple of times attempting it, and everywhere you go, you think, oh, I've opened the shortcut from earlier, and he'll definitely not get me up there, and there he is. I'll go through a donut shop, or I'll go wherever. I remember at one point, I got into a donut shop to hide, and he just stood leering at the window the whole time.
Oh, wow, really?
A school bully waiting for you, like, after you finish school, and I was like, oh, here we go. But actually, once you start working out, especially with the dodge, I think that like if you bang that dodge on like at the correct timing, then it helps so much. And once you kind of get that rhythm of when to do it, when he's going to hit you, and it kind of like throws him off a bit, and then you can run, then it makes it a lot easier. Then the actual boss fight is the same thing where you just need to kind of work out the strategy. But I didn't run out of ammo or anything as much as I thought I would,
Exactly.
and that kind of happened in 2 a lot
Yeah,
more.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, I encountered the exact same thing. So Nemesis sort of landed in the section we were playing, and I was in Mr. X mode. Oh, I'll just try and scoot past him. We've got this new dodge ability, which is great. I'll scoot past him and dive out. And then he does this like weird slide move and just gets in front of you every time. And I was like, oh, I have to fight. This is a boss battle. I have to fight this guy, which I wasn't used to. So he's much more like Tyrant in Resident Evil 2. You know, you get slotted into these areas, and then you have to fight him. Although in Resident Evil 2, those areas are like, I guess you fall into these areas like you haven't been in these areas before. Whereas in 3, you very much, this is kind of the open world of this area, and now Tyrant's here, and now you have to deal with it, and you can't sort of escape that area. So it was a really interesting way to handle it. Another interesting thing I found with it is how quickly we were sort of progressing. I don't know if I was just slow in Resident Evil 2, but it took me ages to get the shotgun in Resident Evil 2.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas we got it really...
Yeah, it was
really
pretty
fast
quickly.
in 3, so that was really interesting as well. But yeah, again, I never had this feeling of sort of like I did in 2, where I was, you know, constantly worried about my inventory, constantly worried, you know, that I was going to run out of ammo, like you say, and I just never got that feeling in 3.
Yeah.
My inventory was a pain because I was picking up so much stuff.
Yeah, I
was
had
picking up
that.
so much stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, just replaying 2 now off the back of it, I'm just like, the management, the inventory management is so much more of a pain there, because you're picking up stuff and you're like, what am I going to store?
Yeah.
Whereas this, you are picking up an awful lot of stuff, but mostly you're using it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And
if you get into that rhythm, right? Whereas I was still like trying to stockpile stuff, and then I'm like, oh, I'm just going to blow everything away with the shotgun.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I did that as well, but then I think, you feel like you're making progress a lot quicker, I guess. There's still the same number of puzzles, but it's not, I think, a case of you're not getting stuck as long, perhaps, in an area. And I felt like there wasn't as much backtracking necessarily, where Resident Evil quite a lot that you are going back to, hey, you've gone to this room, now you've unlocked the thing to go back all the way the other way. And there was parts like that where go back to the control room and stuff like that.
Yeah, you got the bolt cutters, didn't you? And that allowed you access to a lot of different areas.
But usually when you finished with one section, you weren't going back to that section again.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is quite good, because it does mean that you seem to be going forward quite a bit, but there is an element of exploration. And I don't know, part of me missed backtracking a little bit.
No, I get you. And I think because the world's so much more open in this one, maybe we weren't seeing everything. Maybe there is a lot more opportunity for that backtracking. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a lot more opportunity for that backtracking later on, and when you get, like you say, different things, bolt cutters, keys, and etc. But because it was so much more open, I did find myself thinking like, oh, I bet there is a secret down there, but it's a risk to go down there because you don't know what's going to be around the corner, do you? So I really enjoyed my time with it. I can't wait for it to come out on April 3rd. But of course, we did also get to play Resident Evil Resistance, which is worth talking about, I think. The asynchronous 4-on-1 multiplayer mode that's going to come with Resident Evil 3 Remake. So what were your first impressions of that?
So I'm a big fan of, I've always played like Dead by Daylight and Friday the 13th, and I really enjoyed those games, despite there's quite a few problems with bugs and matchmaking with those. But the problem I found with those was that they became quite repetitive quite quickly. So it's always like, oh, fix the generator, everyone fixes the generator, then you escape, or there's like 2 ways to finish something. But we played that, and it took us about 5 or 6 times to get near the end for that, because every time we played, everything changed. So by the time we got used to a map, everything that we had to pick up had changed. So it's essentially 3 areas, and the first kind of area you need to find kind of like keys, I guess. But
like, I think that can change as well. So I think the objective is different each time. So for example, we were playing, the very first one we played, actually, we had to restore a car. So we had to go find tires and the steering wheel and all this other stuff, put them into the car, and then that would open the next area. But like you say, it was difficult. And I think, you know, when you initially start playing this game as the survivors, you are going to get destroyed because you aren't going to have a clue what you're doing. We were having issues with communication as well. Our mics weren't working properly, so we could hear each other, but not everybody else on the team, and we were getting quite angry about that. But yeah, I still had a blast playing it, and it you know, it reminds me a lot of like Evolve, you know, because you do have that one mastermind. There is a broadcast mode as well, so if you are the mastermind, if you're playing with friends, as the Mastermind, you can hear them and they can hear you if you decide you want to activate that mode, which adds an element of sort of stalkering.
Yeah, because I guess you were playing and you were kind of like, oh, well, it's psychological warfare as
exactly,
well.
100%.
Because you got to play a bit of the Mastermind yourself.
I did indeed. So basically the way the Mastermind works is you pick from we had one of 4 options. I don't know if there'll be more in the real game, but we had one of 4 options. You sort of pick that character. So I picked Tyrant from Resident Evil 2, although you play as his wife and you call him in. He's your special. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. When it is difficult, I think, to sort of figure it out. There's a few ways of navigating as the Mastermind. You go through CCTV cameras all around the level, and there are survivors who have abilities to turn them off and everything like that. But the best way I found to navigate was to go into the map, and you have a little crosshair that you can jump around on the map. So I found that really useful. You can see all the survivors on there. And yeah, I did feel a little bit overpowered at certain points. You know, I knew you were struggling with communication, so I let you get through the first phase. I could have wiped them out in the first phase. I could have done it, but I went easy on him. And yeah, so you get these different cards that slot down the bottom, you know, like you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon or something, and then you drop your zombies in. You can take over those zombies' bodies then. They get a little bit more powerful, but that obviously stops you from placing other cards in other zones. I never felt like I couldn't place a card. Like, I was allowed to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, which seemed a bit strange. And maybe that's because I was being a bit slow and thinking about what I was doing. But I thought there would be some sort of cooldown. Like, it seemed that I could just place zombies everywhere.
Yeah, you also said at the time, though, that your worry was that when you drop zombies, though, you're also giving people a chance to add on to their time.
That's true.
Every time you kill a zombie or anything in the game, you get extra time, and you've got a time limit to finish each area. So the more that you kill, that means you get extra time. So if Matt, for example, is throwing a bunch of zombies in our way, as much as that's difficult for us, he's also given us the opportunity to get a bit of extra time to get out of the room.
For sure, and there's an interesting balance to that, I think. Yeah, so you managed to get to the final objective of the one room. I was able to, as the Mastermind, to lock the door, turn off the lights, and then call in Tyrant. And I just, I almost wiped you out entirely. It was so satisfying, though. And, you know, playing as those zombie characters is a bit, I don't know, it's not as sort of clean and polished as the main game, but, you know, that's the kind of thing you'd expect. You know, any video game, I think, where you play as, like, a Hulk-like character is a bit, like, it's a bit slow and a bit sluggish and a bit odd. But, yeah, I think this is a really solid party game. If you get 5 friends to jump on together and play this, you're going to have a blast. If you're in there with randoms, I think you're really going to struggle as survivors.
We struggled a bit with some like random people nowadays. It's kind of about communication, and as much as you can get to know the maps and get to know where the keys are, the problem is if someone else has that key and they will not slot it in, which we had issues with other people who didn't know what they're going to be doing with the keys, and you're yelling at them to do it. So I think, it's about, everyone says games like that are about communication, but it really is.
It really is,
really quite challenging, which is nice. It's a nice breath of fresh air for that kind of genre.
It is nice. And interestingly, it isn't a complete mirror of Resident Evil 3. You know, you play as these survivors who have special abilities, and it's like, use R1, L1, and I was totally forgetting to do all that because we just played Resident Evil 3, and you don't have any special abilities. So it is kind of it is a very different game. It is a very different
But it's
game.
also nice because it comes as, I didn't realize that it comes as a kind of separate game with Resident Evil 3. So you buy Resident Evil 3 and you get this as, they say it's not a mode because it's essentially a whole other game, but it's essentially a whole free extra game that you get with Resident Evil 3. So you can play that whenever you want. You can jump in. It doesn't matter if you finish the Resi free campaign or whatever. You can just jump in or take a little like palate cleanser in between, which is great. Yeah,
it's interesting. I'm looking forward to getting everybody in the office on it,
so
I can torment you as Tyrant and Mr. X. I can't wait. So thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like or click up here and you can see more TechRadar videos just like this. We played Doom early as well, so you can go check that out right there. Remember to subscribe and head to TechRadar for all your latest gaming and tech reviews.